In this video, we're going to take a look at long and synthetic division for polynomials. So here's our first example. You can see we have 5x squared minus 17x minus 40, a quadratic, divided by x minus 5, a linear equation. So some things you should know, a little vocabulary. What's being divided is the dividend. What's doing the dividing is the divisor. And your answer is the quotient. And if there's a remainder, it's plus the remainder. So a couple things we want to think about. Why do we even care about this? Well, if the remainder is 0, then the divisor is a factor of the dividend, and the quotient will also be a factor. So what that means is that if we have a factor, we can find the x-intercepts, or the zeros. So there's two ways to do this division, if we don't just see it and recognize what to do. The first thing is long division. And we do this the same way we would divide regular numbers. But what we're going to look at is always the lead term. So here we have x in the x minus 5, and here we have the 5x squared are our lead terms. So we're going to divide 5x squared by x. That gives us 5x. So that's our first answer, 5x. And then in regular division, we would normally multiply this times the x minus 5, our divisor. So we do 5x times the x, which is 5x squared. And then we do 5x times minus 5, which is minus 25x. From here, this is where we have to be very careful. We subtract, so we have to be careful of signs. That first term will always be gone. Now we're left with negative 17x minus negative 25x, which is really addition. Some people will change this to plus and distribute that, which is fine. So it's whatever works for you. So we have 8x. And then we bring down whatever's left. And if you can do that first step, the rest of this is easy because it just repeats. We now have x is still our lead term, but now we're going into 8x. So we do 8x divided by x, and we simply get 8. So up here we put plus 8. So we have 8 times the x is the 8x, and then 8 times minus 5, which is minus 40 or negative 40. And then when we subtract that, we're left with 0. So our final answer, or our quotient, is 5x plus 8. And notice it's also along the side here in doing our work is our 5x and our 8. And things to look at is notice there is no remainder. So since there is no remainder, that means that 5x plus 8 and x minus 5 are factors of the dividend. And remember, our dividend was 5x squared minus 17x minus 40. Now, some of you out there may notice that, hey, with 5x squared minus 17x minus 40, that is something you can factor because it did factor. So a shortcut, if you recognize it, is you may just go ahead and factor by splitting the middle term or whatever you might do, but it doesn't always work out so nicely. That was one of the simpler examples. So there's another way to do this. You'll notice there was some patterns you might have picked up along the way. So we do something called synthetic division. Now synthetic means fake. So it's not real division. We don't divide at all. Now there is a condition. The divisor, in this case x minus 5, always has to be in the form of x minus a number. It could be x plus a number because it's subtracting a negative. But if it's not in this form, we can't do it. And here's what we do. So x minus 5 is what our divisor is. So we find the 0 of this, which is 5. I'm going to put that right there. Then we take each coefficient. So in this case, it's going to be 5, negative 17, and negative 40. So this is our x squared, this is our x, and this is our constant. And what happens is you'll notice every single time the first term, our first coefficient, is always in our answer, just like it was last time. So we're going to bring that down. So I'm going to write this down, BD. First thing we do is bring down. And then we multiply by that 5, just like we did in that process. So now we're going to get 25. So then we're going to add negative 17 and 25, and we get 8. So we multiplied and we add. And then we repeated the same steps. We multiply by that 5, so we get 40. And then we add, we get 0. So what we're left with is a 5 and an 8, and that x squared reduces to an x. It's always going to be 1 degree less. So our answer is going to be 5x plus, it was x, so now there's no variable here, so we're just left with 5x plus 8 with no remainder. So again, we see that 5x plus 8 is our quotient. And my students always have me remember that, hey, we can just call this BD mama. Bring down, multiply, add, multiply, add. But remember, we need this condition right here of the form x minus blank. So here's a case. You'll notice it doesn't say x minus, it's 2x. Immediately we're thinking long division. So let's try this out. So we have 2x is the lead term of our divisor. 4x cubed is the lead term of our dividend. So we do 4x cubed divided by 2x, which is simply 2x squared. And I keep it organized. I keep it in the 2x, the x squared column is where I put my 2x squared. And then we multiply. And again, we'll always get that 4x cubed because we set it up that way. Now we do 2x squared times plus 1, which is plus 2x squared. Put my little line, and then we subtract. So again, lead terms are gone. We have negative 8 minus 2x squared. So we're going to have negative 10x squared, and that is the most important part to watch out for. That's where you want to be careful. And then we bring down the rest, plus 3x plus 4. So here we have a new lead term. It's our negative 10x squared. So we're just going to repeat this process. Negative 10x squared divided by our 2x. And we get negative 5x. So up here we put minus 5x. And we go ahead and multiply again. So negative 5x times our 2x is the negative 10x squared. It matches. Negative 5 times 1 is our negative 5. Negative 5x. And we are going to go ahead and subtract. Lead terms are gone. And we have 3 minus negative 5, which gives us 8x. And then we're going to bring down that 4. Again, lead term here is 8x. So now we take our 8x, divide that by our 2x, and we're left with 4. So up here we put plus 4. 4 times 2x is 8x. Then we do 4 times plus 1 is plus 4. And again, we subtract, and we're left with 0. So again, we have a case where there is no remainder. So what does that mean? It means that 2x plus 1 is a factor. Okay? Now, if 2x plus 1 is a factor of our dividend, the 4x cubed, that polynomial, that means x equals negative 1/2 is going to be an x-intercept, or a 0, again, of the dividend. So those are the important details to remember. Now, what about synthetic for this? If you really wanted synthetic, could you make that happen? Well, yeah, you could, because it is an x. So if you were to divide the numerator and the denominator by 2, we would have 2x cubed, and it's going to be an equivalent statement, minus 4x squared plus 3/2 x, or 1.5, plus 2 over x plus 1/2. It is now in the form of x minus k. So we'll go ahead and look at the 0 of x plus 1/2, which is negative 1/2. And our first term is a cube. Then we have the squared, we have x, and we have the constant. So we'll have the 2, we'll have negative 4, we'll have 3/2, and our constant was 2. Again, now it's just fraction math. So we're going to bring down 2 times negative 1/2 is negative 1. And then we'll have negative 5. And then we'll have 5/2, and we'll add those together. We'll have 8/2, which is also 4, times negative 1/2, which is negative 2. And again, we're left with 0. So it would be 2x squared minus 5x plus 4. So it is possible on that one. Now, coming into this next one, you can only do long division. There's no way to put this in the form of x minus. And some things I want you to notice is, notice I left a little space here because I noticed there was no x squared term on this. And what you want to do, just to be safe, is go ahead and put in plus 0x squared so you don't miss that. That is something you need to look out for, especially with synthetic division. But again, our process isn't going to change, even though there's 3 terms here. We're still going to look at our lead terms, and we're just going to go ahead and divide. So I have 2x to the 4th over x squared, which is going to be 2x squared. Again, put that in the x squared column, now that we have one. And I multiply by each term. So we'll distribute that out. We'll have 2x to the 4th plus 6x to the 3rd plus 4x squared. Again, be very careful of that subtraction. So we have terms gone. So we have 3 minus 6, negative 3x cubed, 0 minus 4, minus 4x squared. And we're going to bring the rest of that down, plus 5x minus 1. Now we're going to go ahead and look at our lead terms here, negative 3x cubed divided by x squared, which is going to give us negative 3x. So minus 3x goes up here. We have minus 3x cubed, as expected. We have minus 9x squared. And then we have minus 6x. Again, we're subtracting all these terms. Lead terms gone as usual. Negative 4 minus negative 9, so that's going to give us a positive 5x squared. 5 minus negative 6, that's going to give us a plus 11x. And then we're going to bring down that 1. So our final step here is we're going to have the 5x squared being divided by the x squared. And we're left with 5. So plus 5. So again, we're going to go ahead and multiply. We get our 5x squared. We get plus 15x. And we have plus 10. And again, all of this is being subtracted. And that leaves us with 11 minus 15, which is negative 4x. Negative 1 minus 10 is minus 11. Now the x squared doesn't fit into the negative 4x, so here we are left with a remainder. So the way we can write that is our quotient is 2x squared minus 3x plus 5, plus our remainder, which is negative 4x minus 11, over, because that's the divisor, it always goes over the divisor, which is x squared. And so we can see it plus 3x plus 2. And that's our answer. Now, sometimes this will be rewritten a little bit neater, minus 3x plus 5. And they'll factor out that negative here and make this minus. And we can just put 4x plus 11 in the numerator there, x squared plus 3x plus 2. And you may see this later on in some applications, some different things you can do with this answer. Some things you can recognize, like the divisor goes in the denominator here, and the remainder is in the numerator. So what we can conclude here is that x squared plus 3x plus 2 is not a factor of this dividend. Now, I'm going to leave you with one more for you to try. So here we go. We can do synthetic or long division on this problem. And you can try this one by yourself. And if you did this correct, you will end up with an answer of, give you a second there, 2x squared plus 10x plus 35 plus the remainder will be 104 over x minus 3. Now some things I'll let you know about after you do this. Since the remainder is equal to 104, what that will mean is that x minus 3 is not a factor. So since f of 3 is not equal to 0 when we plug it into the dividend, it turns out we're 104 off, so f of 3 will actually be equal to 104. So this is called synthetic substitution. So that's another connection we'll make later on in some application videos. I hope that helps.